I've lived in this neighborhood almost my entire life. It's not the kind of place people notice quiet cul-de-sacs, trimmed hedges, the faint smell of barbecues in the summer, and the sound of sprinklers at dawn. But like any place, if you stay long enough, you start noticing details others overlook. Sometimes those details gnaw at you. Sometimes they won't let go. For me, it was Mr. Ashford. He lived across the street, in the same pale gray Victorian house that looked like it had been plucked out of an old black and white movie. My parents used to mention him when I was younger, just in passing. "Mr. Ashford keeps to himself," they'd say. Nice man, polite, and sure, he was polite. Always dressed neatly, always gave a courteous wave when our eyes met. He was the kind of neighbor you wouldn't think twice about. But one detail lodged itself in my mind like a thorn I couldn't dig out. He never seemed to change. When I was 8 years old, I remember seeing him outside one evening, pruning roses in his front yard. His hair was slicked back, a dark chestnut brown, his posture straight as a ruler. His face sharp cheekbones, pale skin, not a wrinkle in sight. At 8, I didn't think much of it. But when I was 15, I noticed the same thing. Same posture, same hair, same face. When I was 20, again he hadn't aged a single day. And now, at 31, I still look out my window and see him, the exact same man. He could be 50, he could be 60, but no older than that. Not a hint of sagging skin, not a gray hair, not even a limp in his step. It was last year that I stumbled across something that made me spiral into obsession. I was helping my parents clean out old boxes in the attic. They'd kept albums from block parties, community events, even old newspaper clippings about neighborhood parades. In one of those albums, there was a faded picture from 1993, 32 years ago. The same Victorian house stood proudly in the background, and right in front of it was Mr. Ashford. Same hair, same face, same posture. Not one goddamn difference. At first, I laughed it off. Maybe it was his father. Maybe some kind of family resemblance. But no, my mother had written names under every face in that picture. And there it was in her neat cursive, Mr. Ashford, the man standing in front of me every day. The man who still looked exactly like that photograph. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of trick could explain it. Good genetics, plastic surgery, some elaborate prank spanning decades. But no theory satisfied the unease gnawing at me, so I began to watch him more carefully. I didn't mean to be creepy about it. But I found myself sitting by the window more often, lights off, blinds slightly open, just observing. He kept a routine. Watered his roses every morning. Took his trash out every Wednesday night. Brought in groceries on Sundays. Always 2 brown paper bags, never more. He never seemed to host visitors. Never seemed to leave town. Never seemed human. I noticed something else too. His lights were always on at night. Not just dimly glowing, but blazing, every single window lit up, as if he was holding a gathering. But I never saw anyone enter. Never saw anyone leave. I'll never forget the night I decided to cross the street. It was past midnight, maybe 1 in the morning. I told myself I was just curious, just a harmless walk. I crept onto his porch, heart hammering so loud I thought it might wake the whole neighborhood. The curtains were drawn tight, but there was a faint humming noise, low, vibrating, unnatural, like the sound of something alive. I raised my hand to knock, but then I froze, because I heard voices, not one voice, dozens, whispering, chanting, rising and falling in tones that made my skin prickle. I backed away slowly, my foot catching on a loose board on his porch. The sound echoed through the night like a gunshot, and then silence. The humming stopped. The voices stopped. For the first time in my life, I saw the curtains twitch. As though someone or something inside had finally noticed me, I bolted across the street, my legs shaking, barely able to breathe until I locked myself inside my house. The next morning, when I dared peek through my blinds, there he was, standing in his yard, staring at my window, and he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not the polite, neighborly smile I'd seen 100 times before. This one was sharp, deliberate, stretched too wide. A smile that told me he knew exactly what I had done, and for the first time, I realized I might not be the one watching him anymore. Asterisk, I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every shadow under my door felt like it was stretching toward me. When the sun finally rose, I sat on the edge of my bed, exhausted, my mind cycling the same question. What the hell is he? I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe stress was playing tricks on me. But when I looked outside, my blood went cold. Mr. Ashford was standing in his front yard, still, silent, his gaze fixed directly at my window. He didn't move for nearly an hour. Just stood there, smiling faintly. I closed the blinds, but the image burned into my brain. I couldn't concentrate on work, couldn't eat, couldn't think. Every time I peeked through the blinds, he was still there, like a statue waiting for me to crack. By dusk, he finally retreated inside his house. Relief flooded me, but only briefly. Because I realized something. He wanted me to know he had seen me. He wanted me to be afraid, and it worked. That night, I locked every door, every window, double-checked every latch. I told myself it was paranoia, but part of me knew it wasn't. Something was wrong with that man, and I had stumbled too close to it. Still, curiosity burned hotter than fear. The next day, I drove to the county library. If he had lived here for 30 years or longer, there had to be some record. Something to explain him. I started digging through archived newspapers, yellowed pages smelling of mildew and dust. At first, nothing unusual mentions of Mr. Ashford donating to local charities, attending town meetings, sponsoring events. He was always generous, respected, quiet, too perfect. But then I noticed the photographs, articles from 1993, 1981, 1967. Each time, there he was, same face, same posture, same slicked back hair. Not older, not younger. The same. My hands began to shake as I flipped pages faster. There were gaps, decades missing, but every time he appeared again, it was him, frozen in time. That's when I found the obituary. Local woman missing, presumed dead. The article was from 1974. A young woman named Eleanor Pike vanished without a trace. Neighbors last saw her attending a gathering at the Ashford house. The piece mentioned he'd been questioned, that he was cooperative, that nothing was found. Case closed. But the picture accompanying the article, there he was, standing by his pale gray Victorian house. With that same faint smile, my stomach churned. I photocopied the article and stuffed it into my bag, heart racing. I wanted to keep searching, but I felt eyes on me. When I turned, a librarian stood at the end of the aisle, staring. She was an older woman with round glasses, and her lips were pressed into a thin, worried line. "You shouldn't be looking into him," she whispered, almost pleading. I froze. "Excuse me?" Her gaze darted around, as if afraid someone was listening. "You'll only draw his attention. People who ask questions about Mr. Ashford, they don't last long." Before I could say anything, she turned and walked away, vanishing behind the stacks. That night, I barely made it home before panic set in. I taped the photocopied article to my wall, staring at the frozen smile of Mr. Ashford from decades ago. That's when I heard it. A knock at my door, slow, deliberate. My chest tightened. I tiptoed toward the peephole, and there he was, Mr. Ashford, standing on my porch. Face calm, eyes gleaming with something ancient. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't waving. He was just waiting. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock came again and again. Then silence. I waited, trembling, until I finally dared to peek out the window. The porch was empty, but across the street, his house was blazing with light. And behind the curtains, a silhouette stood perfectly still, watching me, and I swear to God, it wasn't just him. There were others. Sleep became impossible after that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut down. Every sound outside made me jolt upright. Every flicker of light from across the street tightened the knot in my stomach. And the worst part? I couldn't stop looking through parted blinds. I saw him standing in that window. Mr. Ashford motionless, hands clasped behind his back, posture perfect. But behind him, faint shadows shifted. Figures, too many to count. Some tall, some small, all indistinct. As though they were made of smoke. Yet the house never had visitors. I told myself I was seeing things. That paranoia was bending my mind. But the longer I stared, the more certain I became. He wasn't alone. By morning, I was desperate for answers. I couldn't live like this, not knowing what kind of nightmare lived across the street, so I did. Something reckless. I crossed the street in broad daylight and knocked on his door. The hum I'd heard that first night wasn't there. No whispers, no chanting. Just silence. After a moment, the door opened, and there he was. "Ah," he said warmly, his smile perfectly rehearsed. "Neighbor." How rare. His voice was smooth, like velvet stretched too tight. I froze. Up close, his skin was flawless. Too flawless. No pores, no blemishes, no marks of time. It was like staring at a mannequin that had learned to breathe. "Ah." "I just wanted to introduce myself," I stammered. "We've lived across from each other for years, and I realized we've never really spoken." He tilted his head, studying me. His eyes dark, endless, felt like they could peel the thoughts right out of my skull. "How thoughtful of you," he said at last. "Would you like to come in?" The words sent a chill straight down my spine. My instinct screamed, "No, don't step inside that house," but my mouth betrayed me maybe. Another time, his smile widened, stretching just enough to reveal teeth too sharp, too clean. "Of course." Another time, I muttered a goodbye and hurried back across the street, sweat trickling down my back. When I turned to glance once more, he was still at the door, still smiling. Still watching until I closed mine. The rest of the day blurred into nothing. But at night, the whispers returned. I woke to a faint sound like dozens of voices murmuring in unison. I crept to the window, heart pounding, and saw his house blazing with light again. Shadows moved behind the curtains, but this time I saw something else in the yard. Under the glow of the street lamp, there was a woman, pale, trembling, barefoot. Her nightgown fluttered in the wind, and her lips moved as if she was begging silently for help. I yanked open my window, ready to call out when she turned her head. Her eyes were gone. Just hollow sockets, black and endless. Before I could scream, long bony. Too many fingers reached from the shadows behind her and dragged her back into the house. The curtains snapped shut. The voices stopped. The lights went dark. I stumbled back, gasping, clutching my chest. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't imagination. Something was happening in that house. Something monstrous. The next morning, I drove back to the library. I needed to find the old woman again, the librarian who had warned me. She wasn't at the desk. She wasn't anywhere. I asked another staff member about her, Mrs. Caldwell. The woman said, "She didn't come in today." Strange, really? She never misses a shift. My blood ran cold, because as I left, noticed a new flyer pinned to the bulletin board by the door. Missing Eleanor Caldwell. Age 72. The woman who had warned me. Gone. And I already knew where. Asterisk, I. Drove home with the missing flyer still burning in my hands, the librarian's face staring up at me from the grainy print. She had known too much. She had warned me. And now she was gone. That night, I sat in my living room with every light on, staring at the street through parted blinds. His house glowed as usual, every window lit up as though he were hosting some eternal party. But the air outside was heavy to heavy. That's when I decided I needed proof, not just for me, but for anyone else who might end up like Mrs. Caldwell. I grabbed an old camera, switched it to video, and waited hours past. Midnight, 1:00 a.m. 2, just as my eyelids began to droop. I saw movement. The front door of his Victorian house creaked open. For the first time in all these years, I saw him leave. Mr. Ashford stepped out, dressed in a black coat, moving with perfect grace. Behind him, 4 figures followed, shadowy, indistinct, as though they were wrapped in smoke. Their shapes shifted with every step, sometimes human, sometimes not. They moved down the street in silence, their bodies gliding more than walking. I fumbled with the camera, my hands slick with sweat, and began filming through the blinds. But as soon as I zoomed in, every single one of them stopped. Their heads turned, in perfect unison, toward me. My heart nearly stopped. I dropped to the floor, pulling the blinds shut, clutching the camera against my chest. Seconds dragged like hours. I waited for the sound of footsteps on my porch, for the inevitable knock on my door. But nothing came. When I finally dared to peek again, the street was empty. The next morning, I checked the footage. My stomach flipped. The recording was warped, distorted colors bleeding, shapes shifting. But one thing stood out. His face, Mr. Ashford, looking straight at the camera. His smile stretched wide, wider than should be possible. And behind him, in the distortion, were faces, dozens of them. Mouths open in silent screams, pressed against the inside of his skin, as if they were trapped inside him. I shut off the camera, bile rising in my throat. That day, I didn't leave my house. I barely moved. But in the evening, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. Knocking. Not at the front door this time. At the back, I crept into the kitchen, every nerve in my body screaming. Slowly, I peeked out through the back door's small glass window. Mr. Ashford stood there, but he wasn't smiling this time. His expression was blank, almost tired, and in his hand, he held the missing flyer. Mrs. Caldwell's face stared at me from the crumpled paper. He raised a finger to his lips. A shushing gesture, then he slid the flyer under the door, turned, and walked back across the yard. I collapsed against the counter, shaking, staring at the paper, and written across the back in thick black ink were words that nearly stopped my heart. Stop digging, or you'll be next. I should have listened. I should have stopped. But I didn't, because the very next night, I saw something that convinced me I had to keep going. His house was alive. The walls seemed to pulse faintly, like they were breathing. The windows glowed too bright, too warm, and when I listened closely, I could hear it. Not whispers this time, but screams, muffled, endless, like dozens of people crying out from inside the walls. That's when it hit me. Mr. Ashford wasn't just hiding something, he was feeding it. Asterisk. After that night, I couldn't look at his house without imagining the screams trapped inside. Every time the walls seemed to shiver, every time the windows burned with that unnatural light, I thought of faces, dozens, maybe hundreds, pressed against the glass, begging for release. I should have run, packed up, left town, disappeared. But where would I go? And how could I live knowing something like this was festering across the street? So instead, I dug deeper. I returned to the library, but the staff looked at me differently now. Whispers followed me down the aisles. The missing flyer of Mrs. Caldwell still hung on the board, but her eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. I went back into the archives, and after hours of combing through brittle pages, I found a clue. An article from 1945. It was about a man named Edgar Ashford. Same name, same house. And the photo. My blood froze. It was him. The same man. The same slicked back hair, the same posture, the same flawless face. He hadn't just been here 30 years. He'd been here nearly a century. The article was about a tragedia barn fire on the outskirts of town. Several lives lost. The article claimed it started after strange gatherings rumored to be occult practices. And who was there? Edgar Ashford. He'd been questioned but released. Of course he had. I photocopied the article, hands trembling. My heart told me I was closer to the truth, but my gut told me I was already in too deep. On my way home, something happened that made my blood curdle. Driving past the gray Victorian, I saw him, Mr. Ashford, standing on the porch. He wasn't alone. Mrs. Caldwell stood beside him, at least. What was left of her? Her body was rigid, her skin pale and waxy. Her eyes empty, like the woman I'd seen dragged into the house. She moved unnaturally, like a puppet on strings. And when he raised his hand, she raised hers in perfect unison. I nearly drove off the road. My vision blurred with terror as I sped home and locked myself inside. That night, I tried to drown it all out. I turned on the TV, blasted the volume, anything to stop thinking. But around midnight, the sound began. That low hum. That unnatural vibration. I shut off the TV. The hum grew louder. It wasn't just in my ears, it was in my bones, my teeth vibrating through me. I peered out the blinds. His house was brighter than ever, glowing like a furnace. Shadows writhed behind the curtains, moving in ways no human body could. And then the front door opened. He stepped out. Edgar Ashford. Or whatever he was. He stood on the porch, his face glowing faintly in the unnatural light. And when he opened his mouth, the sound hit me like a tidal wave. The hum was coming from him. His mouth stretched wider, impossibly wide, and that sound poured out. Shaking the air, rattling the glass. Shapes began spilling out of the doorways, moke-like figures. Too many to count. Writhing and shrieking without sound. They scattered into the night sky like ashes. I fell to the floor, clutching my head, teeth chattering, every nerve in my body screaming. And then, silence. I dared to crawl back to the window. He was gone. The porch was empty. The lights were off, but on my lawn, something fluttered in the breeze. A sheet of old, yellowed paper. I stepped outside cautiously and picked it up. My stomach twisted as I read the brittle words. I offer what you ask, and in return, you offer me forever. Signed beneath in faded ink, E. Ashford. It wasn't just a bargain. It was a pact, and suddenly everything clicked. His agelessness, the disappearances, the shadows. He hadn't beaten time. He'd been feeding it. Asterisk, the paper felt heavier than it should have. As if the ink itself carried weight. I shoved it into a drawer and tried to convince myself it wasn't real. Just some old scrap, some meaningless relic. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more it called to me that night. I dreamt of him. I saw Ashford standing in the middle of a dark forest, his face younger, softer. He knelt before something I couldn't see, just a mass of black. Writhing shapes, its edges shifting like smoke. I offer what you ask, he whispered. His voice was shaky, desperate. And in return, you offer me forever. The shapes reached out. Dozens of hands, long and skeletal, clutched at his arms, his face, his chest. He didn't resist. He let them take hold, and then his eyes snapped open in the dream. He looked straight at me. I woke up screaming. Drenched in sweat, it wasn't just a dream. It was a memory. A moment burned into reality, bleeding into my mind because I'd touched that paper. I knew I had to find out more. The library wasn't safe anymore. So I drove out of town to the county records office. It was nearly deserted, just a bored clerk tapping at a computer. Barely glancing up as I requested files on the Ashford family. It took hours, but eventually I unearthed a box of old documents. Birth certificates, deeds, census lists. The Ashfords went back generations, but one detail stuck out like a knife. Every generation ended abruptly. Ashford men died, young, 35, 40, 42. Until Edgar had no death record. No gaps. He appeared in every census, every decade, unchanged. Sometimes listed as head of household, sometimes as caretaker, sometimes simply as resident. Always there, always the same. But there was one file that chilled me more than the rest. A court record from 1912. It detailed the testimony of a farmer who claimed his neighbor, Edgar Ashford, had been consorting with dark forces. The farmer said livestock had vanished, neighbors had fallen ill, and that he'd seen shapes moving through the windows of Ashford's home at night. The case was dismissed as superstition, but the farmer's final statement haunted me. He doesn't age. I saw him when I was a boy, and I see him now. He has not changed. He is marked. I slammed the file shut, my hands shaking. When I returned home, his house was waiting for me. Lights blazing, windows glowing, humming faintly even in daylight, and sitting on my porch was a small box wrapped in black ribbon. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct screamed at me to throw it away, burn it, bury it. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single object, a pocket watch. Old, tarnished, heavy dot, and etched into the back in elegant cursive was my name. I dropped it instantly, my chest seizing. My name. How? Why? I backed away from the box, but the watch ticked once, loud and sharp, even though it wasn't wound, and from across the street, I heard a voice for the first time, not through dreams, not through vibrations. A clear voice, deep and smooth, echoing in my mind. You're already part of it. I snapped my gaze toward his house. There he was, in the upstairs window, Edgar Ashford, smiling. And behind him, in the glow of the light, were faces. One of them was Mrs. Caldwell. The others, I didn't recognize. Not yet. But I knew if I didn't stop him, one of those faces would be mine. Asterisk. I couldn't sit still after that. My name carved into that watch meant one thing. He wasn't just aware of me, he had chosen me. I spent the next day pacing the house. Curtains drawn, phone in my pocket, debating calling the police. But what could I say? My neighbor hasn't aged in a century and gave me a haunted watch. They'd laugh, or worse, they'd send me somewhere padded and locked, no if. I wanted answers. I had to get them myself, so I waited until nightfall, the moment the neighborhood lights went out. I slipped across the street. My heart hammered in my throat, every step screaming at me to turn back. But I forced myself up his porch, past the roses that reeked of copper and rot. The front door wasn't locked. That alone should have made me turn back. Instead, I pushed it open. Inside, the air was heavy, damp, almost humid. The hum I'd heard before wasn't faint, hear it, was alive, vibrating through the floorboards, the walls, my bones. The entryway looked normal to normal. An old grandfather clock ticked faintly in the hall. A coat rack stood by the door. The wallpaper was faded, the furniture polished, everything in its place. But the deeper I walked, the more wrong it felt. Family portraits lined the hallway, dozens of them. Men, women, children. each photograph perfectly preserved. But in every single one, Edgar Ashford stood in the background. Always the same. Always watching. I forced myself forward. Toward the source of the humming, it led me to the basement door. The knob was cold in my hand. I swallowed hard and pulled it open. The hum grew louder. Step by step, I descended into the dark. The air grew hotter, thicker, choking. My flashlight flickered, barely cutting through the blackness. And then I saw it. The basement wasn't a basement anymore. The walls pulsed like living flesh, slick and glistening. Shapes writhed just beneath the surface, pressing outward like trapped bodies trying to escape. Their faces stretched the walls. Their mouths open in silent screams before sinking back into the pulsing mass. I gagged, clutching the railing, bile rising in my throat. In the center of the room was a circle symbols carved deep into the floorboards, glowing faintly with red light. At its heart sat an altar, black stone slick with something wet. And laid across it was Mrs. Caldwell. Her chest rose and fell shallowly. She was alive before I could move. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. I swung my flashlight toward the stairs. Edgar Ashford stood there, calm, smiling. His shadow stretched unnaturally long behind him, reaching all the way to the altar. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. His voice didn't echo it, slithered, curling around me like smoke. I tried to speak, to shout, but my throat seized. All I managed was a hoarse whisper. "What are you?" His smile widened. A man who kept his promise. He stepped closer, and the hum intensified until my bones rattled. When the world offered me nothing, I made a bargain. And in return, I was given eternity. But eternity requires payment. A hunger that never ends. He gestured at the walls. Faces pressed outward, mouths opening in agony. They sustain me. And soon you will too. I stumbled back, panic flooding me. My flashlight beam shook wildly across the room, catching glimpses of horrors I couldn't process. Arms reaching from the walls, eyes opening in the floor, mouths whispering from the ceiling. But Mrs. Caldwell moved. Her hand twitched. Her eyes fluttered. I couldn't leave her. Summoning every ounce of courage, I lunged forward, grabbing her arm. She was cold, but she clutched back weakly, her lips trembling as though trying to form words. Ashford's smile faltered for the first time. His eyes narrowed. "That one is not yours to take." The hum spiked, a deafening roar, and the walls convulsed violently. Hands shot from the floor, clawing at my legs, my arms pulling me down. I screamed, kicking, thrashing, dragging Mrs. Caldwell with me. Her nails dug into my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. The floor itself seemed to open, black void yawning beneath us. Ashford stepped into the circle, raising his hands. His voice boomed in a language that tore at my ears. And then the watch, the one he'd left for me, slipped from my pocket. It struck the altar with a sharp crack. The hum stopped. The hands recoiled. The walls froze. For the first time, Edgar Ashford looked afraid. His eyes darted to the watch, then to me. "You don't understand what you've done," he hissed. His smile was gone, replaced by something raw. Feral. The watch ticked once, twice, and then the basement went black. Darkness swallowed everything. No sound, no hum, not even my own heartbeat. Just silence, endless and suffocating, then tick. The pocket watch on the altar glowed faintly, its hands spinning wildly. Every revolution sent a pulse through the room, briefly illuminating faces and the walls. They weren't screaming anymore. They were watching, and they were watching me. Mrs. Caldwell's hand still clutched mine, but she was limp, her breaths shallow. I shook her, whispering her name, but my voice felt smothered. as though the dark itself was swallowing the sound. Then I heard it, a whisper, low hissing. Not from Ashford, not from Caldwell. From the watch, "You are chosen." I staggered back, nearly dropping her arm. The watch's glow grew brighter, spilling across the altar, casting long shadows on the walls, and then Ashford appeared. Not walking, not stepping. He simply emerged from the dark, his face pale, his eyes glowing faintly red. He looked younger, somehow his skin taut, his features sharper, his presence overwhelming. "You've woken it," he said, his voice trembling with fury. "Fool, do you know what you've brought upon yourself?" The walls rippled violently, faces pressing outward, mouths opening in silent terror. The floor buckled under my feet, veins of light spreading outward from the watch-like cracks in glass. Ashford stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "That watch was meant to mark you, to bind you, but now you've called its attention." "What attention?" I choked out, my throat raw. He smiled again, but this time the smile was brittle, forced. "The one who gave me eternity. The one who waits in the dark between moments. Time itself, hungry and endless." The floor split open. A void gaped beneath us, swallowing the altar, the walls, the faces. I clutched Caldwell tighter, but my grip was slipping. The air roared like 1,000 clocks ticking at once. Each beat a hammer driving into my skull, and from the void, something rose. Not a figure, not a shape. A presence. Blacker than black, so vast it made Ashford look like a child. Its edges flickered with fragments of clocks, calendars, sundials, things humans had built to cage time. But here, those things were broken, meaningless, and it spoke without words, its voice burrowing directly into my skull. "A debt remains." Ashford dropped to his knees, his composure gone. "No, not me, him." He touched it, not I. "Take him instead." His finger stabbed toward me, trembling, desperate. The presence shifted. For a moment, I felt its attention sweep over me, colder than death. My body locked up, my lungs frozen, my mind screaming. Then the watch clattered to the floor, its hands spinning faster, faster, until they blurred. And suddenly, I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was standing in a forest, the same forest from my dream. The air was damp, filled with mist. The trees loomed tall and endless, their branches knotted like grasping fingers. And ahead, by a stone altar, knelt a younger Edgar Ashford, his hair darker, his face lined with desperation. Before him writhed the same presence I had just seen. It wasn't a memory this time. It was the beginning. I was watching the night he made the bargain. "I offer what you ask," the young Ashford whispered, voice shaking. "And in return, you offer me forever." The presence leaned closer, its voice echoing like 1,000 ticking clocks. "Forever requires payment. Will you feed me?" Ashford's eyes brimmed with tears. "Yes, anything. Anyone." The hands of the presence wrapped around him, sinking into his skin. His face twisted, his scream tearing through the forest as the thing seeped into him, filling him, reshaping him. When it was over, he rose again, no longer just a man. His eyes glowed faintly red. His smile was calm, confident, eternal. And then he turned, not toward the presence, not toward the altar, toward me, as if he could see me through time itself. "You understand now?" he said softly. His voice was older again, the voice of the Ashford I knew. "This is no curse. This is a gift, and soon it will be yours." I stumbled back, gasping. "I don't want it." His smile widened. "You've already accepted. The moment you touched the watch, the pact began." The forest twisted around me, the trees bending, the ground rippling like water. Faces formed in the mist, faces of those he had fed to the presence. They reached for me, their mouths open in silent pleading. The last thing I saw before the forest collapsed into blackness was Mrs. Caldwell among them. Her hollow eyes fixed on me, and then I was back in the basement. The watch lay at my feet, still glowing faintly. Ashford stood opposite me, his face calm again. "Triumphant, you've seen it," he said. "Now you know the truth. There is no escape. You are bound, forever." The watch ticked once more, and I realized he was right. Asterisk. No, that's all I could manage. The word scraped my throat raw, but I forced it out again. No, I won't be part of this. Ashford's eyes glimmered in the dim red glow of the symbols around us. "You don't have a choice." I stumbled back, clutching Mrs. Caldwell tighter. Her breaths were faint, but she was alive barely. She was the only tether I had to sanity. If I let her go, I knew the pact would swallow me whole. The watch ticked again, loud as a gunshot. Each tick pulsed through my veins, my heartbeat sinking with it until I couldn't tell which was which. Ashford stepped closer. "Feel it? That rhythm. That's eternity calling. Every second, every breath, it's binding to you. And soon you'll understand why I smiled when I realized you were the one chosen." I shook my head violently. "I don't want it." He chuckled, low and almost pitying. "You will. They all say that at first. But the hunger changes you." The faces in the walls began to move again. Not screaming, this time whispering. A chorus of voices slithered through the basement. Layering over one another, "Join us, feed us, forever." I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. Their whispers wormed into my mind. Images filled my head, me standing where Ashford stood. Centuries passing in the blink of an eye. Neighbors aging and dying while I remained untouched, and beneath it all, the hunger. The need to feed the presence. I almost collapsed under the weight of it. But then Caldwell's grip tightened. Her nails dug into my wrist, sharp, anchoring me. I looked down, and for a split second her eyes were open glassy, but filled with something fierce. She mouthed a single word. "Run." That broke the trance. I tore my gaze from the watch, from the whispers, and lunged toward the stairs. Ashford's snarl ripped through the basement, not calm or composed, now Pharrell, furious. "You can't leave." The walls convulsed. Hands burst from the plaster, clawing at me, raking across my clothes and skin. I dragged Caldwell with me, stumbling, nearly falling. Her weight slowed me down, but I couldn't leave her. Ashford's voice rose behind me, a guttural chant in that same language he'd used before. The basement shuddered violently, the floor splitting open again. The presence stirred, its vast shadow rising from the cracks. I screamed and threw myself up the stairs. The wood beneath my feet splintered, hands tearing at my ankles, but adrenaline burned through me. I heaved Caldwell over my shoulder, ignoring the pain in my muscles, and shoved at the door with everything I had. It burst open. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. But the hum followed. The house itself trembled, and then silence. I turned. The basement door had slammed shut on its own. The hum was gone. For a moment, I thought I'd made it. But then I saw Ashford. He was already there, standing calmly at the end of the hallway. No longer feral, no longer snarling. Just smiling again. "You can run," he said softly. "But you can't leave me. Not anymore. We are bound." The house groaned around us. Every clock on the walls, every watch in the drawers, every hidden gear and cog began to tick in unison. A deafening orchestra of time. I backed away, clutching Caldwell tight. My mind screamed at me to get out, to break free, but my body felt heavy, every step sluggish. as though the house itself resisted me. Ashford tilted his head. Go then. Drag her back to your home. Pretend you still have a choice. But remember this, every tick brings you closer. Sooner or later, you'll come back to me. They always do. And with that, the front door creaked open on its own, spilling pale moonlight into the hall. I didn't think I just ran. Out the door. Across the street, into my house, slamming the locks shut behind me. I laid Caldwell on the couch. Her chest still rose and fell, but faintly. I grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. But before the call could connect, the line went dead. Every clock in my house began to tick slow, loud in perfect unison, and on my kitchen table, though I swear I hadn't brought it with me, sat the watch, still glowing, still ticking, waiting, asterisk, asterisk. The ticking filled my house, rattling the windows, the floorboards, even my skull. I staggered back from the table, staring at the watch. Its hands spun wildly, faster than they ever had before. Glowing so bright, it bathed the whole room in sickly red. Light dot, then dash knock, 3 sharp raps at the door. I froze. Another. Knock. Louder, and then his. Voice, calm. Patient. It's time. Ashford, I. Grabbed the heaviest thing within. Reached a fireplace poker and stood trembling. The phone still dead in my hand. Mrs. Caldwell wheezed faintly on the couch, her chest struggling with each shallow breath. The knock came again, this time rattling the door off its hinges. You can't fight what you've already become, Ashford said. You're mine. Open the door, and I'll make it painless. I didn't move, and then the door swung open on its own. He stepped inside, as though he owned the place, his suit immaculate, his smile carved into his face like stone. Behind him, the air shimmered, the same black void I'd seen in the basement oozing into my home. Eating at the walls and floor, the presence was with him. You feel it, don't you? Ashford said, tilting his head. The hunger, the pull. The longer you resist, the worse it gets. Why fight it? Why not embrace eternity? The ticking grew louder, every clock in the neighborhood now joining the chorus. The walls pulsed, the air warped. My body felt like it was being pulled apart, stretched between 2 choices, surrender or resist. I raised the poker, though my arms shook so badly it barely looked like a weapon. I'll never be like you. Ashford chuckled, low and cold. You already are. The watch leaped off the table. It floated between us, spinning, glowing brighter, its ticks now like thunder. The void behind Ashford swelled, and from it the presence began to emerge again. Vast, shapeless, endless. Its whisper slithered into my mind. Choose. Ashford spread his arms, smiling at me like a father welcoming his son. Take my hand. Accept your place. Together, we'll never hunger. The presence's voice grew louder, drilling into me. Feed or be fed. I looked at Caldwell, frail, dying, her chest barely rising. If I surrendered, I knew she would be swallowed into that void, her soul another face in the walls. No, not her. Not me. I grabbed the watch out of the air. It burned, searing my skin, but I held tight. The spinning slowed, the ticks faltering. Ashford's smile faltered. What are you doing? I clenched my jaw, forcing the words out through the pain. If this thing binds me, then maybe it can unbind you. Before I could lose my nerve, I shoved the watch against his chest. The reaction was instant. Ashford screamed not in pain, but in rage. His skin split, light pouring from the cracks. The watch's hands spun so fast they blurred into nothing, the ticking collapsing into a single deafening note. The presence roared, the void convulsing violently. The house shook, plaster raining from the ceiling. windows exploding outward. Ashford staggered, his smile gone, his eyes wide with fear for the first time. "No, you can't." The watch sank into his chest, fusing with him. His scream rose higher, shattering glass, rattling bones. And then he was gone. Not dead. Not alive. Just gone. The presence howled, a sound that split my mind open. Then, slowly, it began to retreat, folding back into the void, its whispers echoing as it sank away. Another will feed me. Another will pay. And then, silence. The void collapsed, leaving only my ruined home. Every clock was shattered, every wall cracked. Mrs. Caldwell lay still on the couch, her chest no longer moving. I dropped to my knees, the weight of it all crashing down. But then I heard it tick, soft, steady. I looked down, the watch was in my hand again. Its face was blank now, its hands gone. But it still ticked, and when I looked at my reflection in its cracked glass, I saw something that made my blood freeze my eyes, glowing faintly red. I dropped it, stumbling back, but the sound followed me. Tick, 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 no matter where I ran, no matter how I tried to cover my ears. The ticking stayed with me, and deep inside, beneath the terror and exhaustion, I felt it. The hunger. Ashford hadn't lied. I was bound forever. Asterisk, asterisk. Thanks for watching this terrifying, scary story. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. If you've ever had a creepy experience, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. Last but not the least, before leaving, please check out the horror story ebook. Link in the description. See you in the next one. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the shadows. Good night.